Hi everyone, welcome to the Skill Up Online podcast. I'm your host today. My name's Freddie, and I'm here today with Andrea Bremner, who is a nutritional therapist and NLP master coach. And if you don't know anything about either of those things, we are going to tell you today. So thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to be here.
Isn't it? And it's quite nice to actually cozy up and actually do a podcast today because it's been very
Yeah,
chilly outside.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think the last time we met, it was a little bit chilly, and it was outside in a pub somewhere, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, which was really nice.
Which
It was
was
nice.
lovely, yes. But it's nice to be at home and stay snugly and warm.
Yes, it is. It
Mm.
was flurrying that day, I think, actually.
I think
It,
it had just started to snow, hadn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it had. It had. But yeah, thanks for joining us. On this podcast, we like to go through all things fitness education, health, exercise, nutrition, and also anatomy and physiology and injury and things like that. So we have a really wide variety of topics, but we're really excited to get you on because this is kind of our first foray into what it is that you do. So to start, if you could just please tell us all about who you are and what it is that you do.
How long have you got? So this could take a while. Yes, so as you said, nutritional therapist and master practitioner of NLP. But I kind of call myself, people ask, they say, what do you do? I'm kind of in holistic wellness, is kind of how I would describe it, because it's not just doing nutrition or doing NLP or promoting exercise or whatever it is. It's combining all those things to try and enable individuals to reach their optimal health, really, whatever that is, because it's obviously different for everybody. So my job really is to coach, to support, to educate, and to help people achieve their best health. So that's really what I do. I'd say that
That's
there's
lovely.
oh, have we frozen there a bit? I think we froze a
Oh,
bit.
I think we did. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, yeah, I've got you.
Perfect. I could hear you the entire time, but I'll just
Oh,
edit
good.
this out.
Okay.
Sorry, go on.
Yes. So nutrition and NLP really. I started off in the field of NLP before nutrition, but before that it was exercise. My history goes right back to very early days where I was always into sport as a kid, and my main sport was gymnastics, and I was a national squad gymnast, and I was training 24 hours a week, which I would not recommend to anybody, to be honest.
No.
And that was from a very, very young age. I was like 11, leaving the house at 7 in the morning to get to school, going straight to the gym after school, training till 9:30 at night, coming home, and then the next day repeat. So it sort of did not some great things for my mental health or my physical health, to be honest. Loads of injuries, and by the time I was 18, I was probably a ball of nerves and probably starting to creak at the seams anyway. But I still carried on with the exercise. I moved into heptathlon, like, so why not just murder yourself with 7 events instead of just doing one? But no, from gymnastics, I thought, no, I'll try 7. And so I got into that, and I kind of just kept myself fit. Like I loved exercising, and I ended up working in the health and fitness industry for many years. Worked in gyms, worked in leisure centres. I was kind of in the sales and marketing side more than actually in the fitness side, but myself always in the gym. I would be in the gym before work or after work or whatever. So always appreciating the importance of exercise in life, for mental health as well as physical well-being. And it kind of, I think it kept my chronic injuries at bay, really, because I was obviously had a lot of injuries from my sport, and I think just keeping active just really helped to control all of those. But then I think I was sort of in my mid-20s where my anxiety had got really bad, and that was as a result of childhood and all the stress that I went through. It kind of came back to bite me in the bum later on in life. And it was through the health and fitness business that I got introduced to NLP, actually. And because I was working in training, so I was training staff, whether they were in sales or marketing or fitness or whatever area they were in. And we learned tools of NLP to help sell gym memberships. She's a bit sneaky, really.
Mm.
And it was NLP is really behavior change technique, and it's using language patterns to get people to change their behavior. So it's super positive as long as you're, working on the right behaviors and your intent is positive. Um, and obviously, we wanted people to sign up for our gym memberships because we know how important exercise is. So we started using tools of NLP to change people's behavior towards exercise and their lifestyle, which was super effective. But I also noticed I started to use these techniques on myself, and it really started to help with my anxiety. And I was like, wow, this is incredible stuff. Like, you can just change the way you visualize something, or the way that you speak to yourself, or the way that you even hold yourself, your posture changes immediately the way that you feel. And so I did some research into that and ended up thinking, no, this is really what I want to do. So I kind of left the health and fitness world of gyms and leisure centres, and got myself qualified in NLP and trained as a practitioner and then a master practitioner. And then I started using that to work with people on a one-to-one basis to help them change their behaviour in their life. So if there was something in their life that they didn't like had a bad habit, or they had a negative thought process of I'm not good enough, or whatever it was, I started helping them with tools of NLP to change that. And again, had amazing results, and it was wonderful. But there was still a piece of the jigsaw that was missing. And though I could get people to a point, there was a point where, there was a bit of a block still there. And it was the same with me, actually. My health wasn't 100%. And though I was doing all these things, there was something still missing. And as a result of my health, which started to go downhill really post pregnancy, I started knocking on doors trying to find out what was wrong, and eventually stumbled across gut health. And it was that changed my life. So I then thought, wow, this stuff is so powerful, over and above the NLP and exercise and everything else. If you can get your gut right, then actually it really does make a massive difference to everything. So I thought, I need to learn more about this. So I trained as a holistic nutritionist, and I started introducing nutrition as well as NLP and other things into what I do. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how I ended up doing what I do now.
Wow, that's so interesting. And I guess answers my question really in terms of how, well, what led you to be interested in nutrition, the power of healing body through diet and exercise. Because as you said, you've had some health issues of your own. And I know that always sparks something in people to investigate something further. I know I'm the same when I have anxiety, for example. I always want to know why, and I want the root cause of that. And we've talked before about the relationship between the gut and, well, your mental health. You're always saying that the gut is the kind of mind of the body, as if your mind isn't of your body, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a topic I find hugely fascinating, and so I am so excited for us to be talking about it today.
Mm.
Um, could you just give us a brief explanation about the microbiome? What is it? And a brief overview of how making those positive changes to your gut can impact you as a whole?
Well, that's a big question.
It's a
And I
big
love
question.
this. Yeah, I love this connection, between the gut and the brain. There is something called the gut-brain axis, which you and your listeners may have heard of. And there really is. There is a huge connection. And this is one thing that I noticed. Probably the most powerful connection was this gut-brain axis. As soon as I started to heal my gut, I noticed that I started to feel emotionally better, more stable, better mental clarity, anxiety had dropped right down. Just thought, wow, it didn't take long. It didn't take long for the gut, the healing of the gut, to start healing the brain. So again, that's why I wanted to delve deeper and find out more. So the gut is actually connected directly to the brain via the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, vagus is Latin for wandering. And it means that the vagus nerve actually goes from the brain to all different organs of the body. And it's a super fast highway of communication between the brain and all the other organs in the body. Now, we always thought that it was the brain that was telling the gut what to do. But now we realize actually it's the gut that tells the brain what to do. Because for every neuron that travels from the brain to the gut, there are 7 going from the gut to the brain. So the power is in the gut when it comes to the health of the brain, not the other way around. So this is where it's super powerful. If you just heal the gut, you can start to heal the brain. But they're also now starting to discover the gut-lung axis and the gut-heart axis. And we know this as well because, say, if you feel anxious, then you immediately feel it in your stomach. So that's that gut-brain communication. But then immediately your heart rate will go up. So how does that happen? You know, it's just incredible how all these things are so connected. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about the gut is we initially thought it was actually the gut itself, the gut wall or the gut lining of the wall that was communicating with the brain. But now we also know that the actual microbes in the gut communicate directly with the brain. So super powerful communication network. And I think just that, if we can just heal the gut a little bit, then not only does the mental health of the body start to improve, that the rest of the body starts to improve. And there are 3 main reasons for this. So the first one really is the nervous system. And this is obviously part of the vagus nerve and how things are connected. And the gut itself has the largest neural network outside of the brain and spinal cord. And how it's such a huge network is because the gut itself, which only goes from mouth to anus, doesn't seem like that long a distance. But actually, if you spread it out flat, it would be the size of a badminton court. So it's this huge surface area. Now, if you think of the outside of our body, our skin on the outside, our gut is like the skin on the inside. And it's what protects us from what's in the outside world going into the inside world. So this big neural network is part of that protection. So it's communicating constantly. Anything that comes into it, it's sending messages all over the body as to what we need to do with this. So it has this massive enteric nervous system. And as a result of having this big nervous system, it also makes a lot of our neurotransmitters, which are our chemical messengers which pass information around the body. Now, one of those neurotransmitters that you're probably all familiar with is serotonin. And 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So if our gut is unhealthy, then you can just imagine just on the level of serotonin, we're not making serotonin either enough or making it in the right quantities at the right time. And that has a huge impact on our mental health. So just that little, bit of information there about the nervous system and how it impacts on our health. Just by changing the health of the gut, we can change the health of the nervous system and hence the brain and other parts of the body as well. So that's just one part. And the second part is our hormonal systems. So we know that our hormones are all made within our endocrine system. We have endocrine glands all over the body that make our hormones. But our gut is the largest endocrine organ in the body. So our gut makes the majority of our hormones. And this is what happens with, particularly when women go through menopause. If their gut is unhealthy, then their menopausal symptoms are so much worse than if they've had a healthy gut at the start. So I work with a lot of menopausal women or premenopausal, and I try and get their gut into the healthiest position possible because then they kind of sail through the menopause. Whereas those that have the unhealthy gut, they really struggle. I found out recently, actually, that Japanese women don't ever really suffer from the menopause. In fact, they don't even have a word for it in their dictionary.
That's nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and because of their healthier diet, the average Japanese woman lives 7 years longer than the average UK woman. And because of the health of their diet, I think that might be because they've probably got healthier guts and hence their hormonal system's healthier and hence they don't get the menopausal symptoms so much. So fascinating, that. So that's the second one. And then the third one is the immune system, probably the most powerful, really. 90% of our immune system lines our gut. So if our gut is unhealthy, then the immune system is going to be on high alert. And it means we're going to be sending off inflammatory molecules, which will get into the bloodstream, get all over the body, and they can get stuck. Those inflammatory molecules can get stuck in our joints and cause inflammation and pain. They can get stuck in our brain and cause inflammation and pain. So yes, for those three things, really, the immune system, the hormonal system, and the nervous system, because they are so intricately linked with the gut, that if you can just make slight changes in the gut, you have an impact on all those systems, and hence other things in the body start to heal. And I have this, really weird things happens with clients, that they'll come to me for anxiety, as an example, and we change the diet and they start to feel better. But then they also go, oh, and I've had this really bad knee injury for, I don't know, years, and I've had all these, been to the physio a lot, and it's kind of got a little bit better, but it's still there niggling, and it's suddenly gone. And that's inflammation. So, you get that inflammatory response, you get the immune system under control and get the immune system healthier, and then suddenly the rest of the body starts to heal as well. So yes, so that's a bit about the gut, but the microbiome itself is part of that story. So our microbiome is made up of trillions and trillions of microbes, and these can be bacteria or viruses or fungi, and the majority of them should reside in our colon, in our large intestine. And they do say that our microbiome consists of more microbes than we have cells in our body. In fact, about 10 times more. So apparently we have 90 trillion microbes in our microbiome, but only 10 trillion cells in our body. So this microbiome is hugely powerful. And they do say that we actually are only 10% human, and 90% of us is microbes. So what are they all doing there? Why are they there? And we live in a symbiotic relationship with them. And they help us. We feed them and we keep them alive. And in return, they support us as well. And if we didn't have our microbiome, we would be dead. We need to have these microbes. I also don't necessarily believe that there are bad microbes and good microbes. I think it's just if one grows more out of control, then it can become pathogenic. But as long as they're in balance, then they're all doing their jobs for us. So this microbiome sits in our colon, and it does a number of things. Number one, it trains the immune system. It teaches the immune system how to behave and what's friend and what's foe. And yes, it also breaks down all our fiber. So fiber is, part of carbohydrate that's indigestible to our human cells, but not to our microbes. So our microbes actually break down our fiber and produce a lot of lovely fatty acids and other compounds, which are really, really powerful for us and really help us. So if we didn't have our microbiome, then, we wouldn't be healthy at all. So that's really where it sits. It sits in our colon, though sometimes it's not there, and that's when it can cause a problem.
Where would it be then?
So sometimes it will migrate into the small intestine.
Ooh.
So the upper gut.
Mm-hmm.
This should be relatively sterile. Like the stomach itself, as we all know, is hugely acidic.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hugely acidic for a reason. It's to help break down proteins, but more than anything, it's to keep microbes out, pathogenic microbes out. So if you think of how we evolved as cavemen, we were probably eating a lot of stuff off the ground and a lot of bad stuff. And we needed to have this really acidic stomach to stop any of that entering the rest of our body. So we have this very, very acidic stomach that's pretty sterile and microbe-free. That then empties into our small intestine, where a lot of our digestion breakdown takes place with all our digestive enzymes and everything. And then from there, once it's broken down, it then moves further down into the colon. The small intestine should be pretty sterile as well. what happens is if we're eating foods that are toxic to us, or we have too much of one type of food, then sometimes these microbes migrate from the large intestine up into the small intestine where they shouldn't be. And they migrate there to feast on what it is that we've put into our small intestine that we've probably got too much of that really shouldn't be there. And they feast on it by fermenting because they're anaerobic. So they ferment and they produce a lot of toxins. And that toxic load shouldn't be in the small intestine. And that then can cause something called leaky gut, which you may have heard of, intestinal permeability, and then you're in all sorts of trouble once you get something like leaky gut. So yeah, this microbiome should really be sat in our large intestine and not having too much of it at all in the small intestine.
Gosh, that's all so interesting. And it's like you said, it's such a massive topic, but all of it makes so much sense.
Mm,
So it always just makes me think, like, why aren't we doing it already? And I
yeah,
know that we've just been conditioned in this society where suddenly, I mean, we are the most unhealthy we've ever been as a
yeah.
society in what we eat, in what we do, or rather the lack of what we do.
Mm,
And that's why we're all in this industry, right? Is to help people become better versions of themselves, whether that be through diet, through exercise, through things like NLP. Um, it just, when you're talking about it, just makes so much sense. And I'm sat here going, well, of course, but of
yeah.
course.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
It's amazing. It's such like you said, it's such a huge topic. Um, it's something I'm sure we could probably talk about for hours. But for those who might have an interest in working in this particular area, do you have any kind of advice where you might start? How did you get started?
Mm, mm. Yes. So, well, my start was how do you heal the gut? What do we do? Now, these conditions of leaky gut, which I think lead to a lot of other problems in the body, particularly inflammation, they're quite novel. This has only been around for 50, 60 years if we found these conditions. Things like heart disease, obesity, diabetes, they're really recent in our world. If you go back 100 years, they weren't really there at all. So something's happened, in the last 100 years, and particularly in the last 70 years post World War II, is when things have really started to significantly change. And there's obviously something that we're doing that is causing these problems. And nobody really knows exactly what it is because lots of things have all happened at the same time. So, it's very hard to say what it is. But I think it's a combination of food and how our food is now made, and the sort of diet that we have in the Western world. I think that's part of it. I think the other part is toxins. There are many more toxins in our environment now than there ever were 70 years ago. And that a lot of that comes out of the food processing industry and the use of herbicides and insecticides and pesticides and all those chemicals that are actually on our food that we then ingest. And our body is designed to get rid of these. We have a super clever body. It is to be worshipped. It's just incredible what it can achieve. But if we overload it with toxins, then it's going to be hard to get all of those out, and then they end up getting stored in fat cells, and they can cause us a lot of trouble. So yeah, I think it's a combination of the toxic buildup together with the nutrition. Um, I don't know whether it's exercise so much. I think that since the sort of exercise revolution, sport for all in the 1970s, I think we all kind of woke up to we got to move more.
Mm,
Um, I'm not a big fan of eating less, though, I have to say. I
no, I don't.
think it's more about eating the right things. So this whole move more, eat less industry that we've been living in for, 50, 60 years now, well, it hasn't
Mm,
worked, has it? Because obesity and diabetes and heart disease is worse now than it's ever been. So the whole move more and eat less hasn't worked.
mm,
I'm a big fan of move more. I don't think we're moving any less than we were 50 years ago. I think we're pretty good because we're really aware of it, you know, and I think people are more active. Um, but the whole eat and what you should be eating is a misnomer, I think, for most people. And there's a whole industry of low fat diets and having lots of nice carbs. And I kind of flip that on its head. I'm a little bit controversial in that sense that I think it's carbs that's the problem. Too many of them. I think carbs are bad, or all carbs are bad. Some carbs are bad. Some fats are bad. But I think it's more about getting a balance of reducing those carbs, having more healthy fats, having healthy proteins, having healthy fiber, and eating whole foods and not processed. So for me, one of the biggest toxins in our gut is too much sugar. And it's also one of the biggest problems that leads to diabetes and obesity and heart disease. And we're probably all aware that eating carbohydrates break down to glucose, that passes into the bloodstream. Then we get an influx of insulin into the blood, and insulin's job is to shuttle that out of the blood. The problem is, if we've got getting too much glucose all the time, we end up with something called insulin resistance. It's a bit like antibiotic resistance. You know, have too much of something, eventually it doesn't work. So what happens, the insulin then doesn't really do its job. So the glucose isn't shuttled out. So the pancreas just ends up producing more insulin, just get more and more insulin into the body. So we end up with this insulin resistance, and that is the cause of obesity and diabetes and everything else. So how do we do that? How do we control insulin? Well, we control insulin by controlling glucose. How do we control glucose? Well, we just reduce the amount of carbs we eat. So I would start on that first with my clients. That would always be my first thing. And though, you know, I'm a big fan of vegetables, I think we should all be having vegetables, but not too starchy, like not a whole plate of potatoes. Try and get people to stay off grains for a bit because they can be quite toxic in the gut and quite hard for us to break down. If someone's got leaky gut, then it's only going to exacerbate that problem. So, you know, having some things like broccoli or cauliflower and even carrots, you know, the most starchiest I go to is swede. So, you know, if you're going to have a roast dinner, have it with roasted swede instead of with roasted potatoes. And I try and get people to learn how to reduce the carbs in their diet. And it's not easy to do because our whole Western world diet is built around carbs. Probably our plate is like 50-60% carbohydrate. And I try and get people down to 10%, not all the time, but for a period of time. We might have a day where we have some carbs and then the next day we come off them again. So we're teaching the body how to come off carbs and start burning fat as an energy source instead of always burning glucose as an energy source. So that's really where I would start with anybody.
And the thing with that as well is that yes, you're doing it for the reason of healing your gut and, you know, for healing your insides, from healing from the inside out. But that will have, for a lot of people whose goals are things like weight loss, that will have an absolutely massive impact on their weight and their goals. So I do think you're right. I think obviously, you know, there are going to be a lot of PTs and people listening to this. Obviously, a lot of your remit is going to be exercise, but you know, it is really worth, you know, doing that training into the nutrition side of things, because without that, you're not going to get the same kind of results with your clients
Absolutely.
just with exercise. And if you want to be making that full holistic change and you want that to be coming from you, it's just a question as to whether what if you are just doing the exercise side, which is fantastic, you know, we need people to be doing it. Are you going to be making that kind of change, or do you want to go out and do the training and kind of step into what you do, Andrea? And I think that's, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but that was basically the point.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, you know, it is that holistic approach, isn't it? So exercise is one part of this, but it's not the only part. And nutrition isn't the only part either. There are many other parts to it.
Mm.
And I think just getting that little bit of knowledge of nutrition under your belt will make you a more credible personal trainer because you will get results. You will get results from it. But it's also not. It's difficult nutrition. I think it's even harder to train people in nutrition than it is in exercise.
Mm,
Because you can give someone an exercise program to do, they can go away and they can practice that exercise program. But with food, it's so complicated because there's a lot of beliefs that come into food that need to change.
mm,
There's the way people plan their food for the week, the way that they shop, the way that they cook. There's just this whole different thing that needs to change. And it's really, really difficult to get your clients to do it. And you need to almost hold their hand daily to do the process
mm,
because it's super complicated. It's like a simple concept. Just say, well, just reduce your carbs. It sounds easy, doesn't it? But when it actually comes to doing it, it's like, well, what carbs and how? And what do I have for dinner instead? And what am I going to have for breakfast if I can't have toast? So, it's you need to kind of have uh, other substitutes in place up your sleeve that are simple and easy that you can offer to them that makes
mm,
their job easier. And that's kind of what I do with mine is I have a load of other um, suggestions that if they can't have toast and marmalade for breakfast, then this is what you can have instead. It's a bit like toast and marmalade, it's just not,
a little
and
bit.
then you need
That segues us. Sorry, go on.
then you just need to hold their hand through the whole process. So I contact them daily. I have a daily program that is just drip fed to them on a regular basis. And it just holds them accountable. And I speak to them every week, which again holds them accountable because they like, no, God, Andrew's going to be calling me tomorrow. I better crack on and do this. So you've got to keep that responsibility there.
Mm,
But yeah, but again, it just makes you a more rounded um, trainer or coach,
mm,
if that's what you are, if you have these other strings to your bow. And for me, I call it the four pillars, but I've just thought of another pillar actually. But the four pillars, it's the four S's. So S for sustenance, S for sleep, really important. We forget about that, but that's so important. S for stress, again, really, really kills the gut. Stress does. If you're going to get a leaky gut, you get it from stress. Forget what you're eating.
mm,
And the fourth one is sweat, exercise. So they're the four pillars. But then I always added a fifth one in called sunlight because we need the sun as well. So but it's getting all those things in a balance. And if you can teach your clients about all those areas, then you become even more credible and more successful because you'll have better results.
mm. Absolutely. I was going to say it segues us, you talking about what you're doing quite nicely into. So let's say you're a PT or a Pilates instructor, there's lots of people listening on here. And actually you don't want to do the nutrition side yourself. What is it that you offer? Tell us a little bit about what you offer,
Mm.
um, and how people could maybe point towards, someone like you.
Yeah, yeah. So what I've done is initially I just would sit down with clients on a one-to-one basis and try and explain what I wanted them to do and send them off with a list of job notes. And of course, they aren't going to do it. If they do 10% of it, you're lucky. So then I thought, do you know what I need to do is break this down. I got to make this really simple. And I've got to put it into bite-sized pieces because people are busy. They have busy lives. They're up early, trying to fit in an exercise before they, go to work. And then they got to dash to pick the kids up from school. And then they're trying to cook dinner while they're on a podcast or, it's just life's manic for people. They don't have time to sit and think about, oh, and how am I going to cook this, piece of swede that you've just recommended that I eat? So you need to drip feed. So what I did is I pulled together a program which has around 35 sessions in it. But generally, I just give people 28 sessions. So it takes 28 days, but people pause the program if it gets too much for them. So say they've done a week's worth and they're like, oh my God, I've been really overloaded with work. I'm 3 sessions behind. They might pause it for 3 days or a week, depending, they go on holiday or whatever. So some people take 28 days to finish it. Some people take 2 or 3 months, depending on their lifestyle and what they're up to. And in those sessions, I drip feed what I want them to do. And at the same time, I give them tools to do it. So it's not, it's very educational. So it's not just what I want you to do. It's why I want you to do it. So I answer the question why. And I find when people have enough reasons as to why they should do something, they can get themselves to do almost anything. So you just need to answer that question why. So that the program comes out with it's a video of me, a pre-recorded video of me talking about, a subject, be it protein as an example. And I will explain the importance of having protein, and this is the sort of protein you should have, and this is how you introduce it into your lifestyle. So they might go away with that, and that'll be one day's work, and then the next day it will be fats, and a different story will come out. And pre to the program, I always send out a medical symptoms questionnaire, which I then follow up after the program so I can see any improvement. And they can also see the improvement because clients forget. Like they turn up for their first session and they forget, 6 months later, how ill they were at the start and how much better you've made them feel. When you can remind them of that, it's like, oh my God, yes, I was like that, wasn't I? So it's really good to do a pre and post questionnaire. And yeah, so that's the program that I've created. And maybe, I don't know, Freddie, maybe it's something that I could pull that together for some of your personal trainers or whatever and teach them that program, which they could then deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely something that I think loads of people could do with benefiting from. So, we'll put your details, guys. The details will all be on the podcast notes, to have a look at Andrea and what she's doing, and so that you can kind of link up as well. But yeah, I mean, it all sounds fantastic. I mean, we could literally talk for hours on it, and I wish we had more time. But hopefully, we'll have you back soon, and hopefully, we'll have you on to do a masterclass because it's so interesting. And I know that a lot of people that or a lot of our Skill Up members will be interested in asking questions and interacting with you. So hopefully, we can have you back.
Yeah.
So I think for today, I will say thank you so much for your time and for that very whistle-stop tour. But it was a really interesting glance into, well, inside us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we hope to see you very, very soon.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thanks so much for asking me. It's been a privilege. Thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks so much. Take care.